We often imagine that being a queen is a matter of pure fantasy, a life where one simply points a gloved finger at a velvet box and a tiara appears. We picture the royal vault as a limitless playground of sparkle, but the truth is far more grounded and perhaps far more human. For Queen Elizabeth II, the crown jewels were not just treasures, they were physical objects that had to be managed. They had weight, they had sharp edges, and crucially, they had to coexist with the mundane realities of being a living, breathing woman who had to turn her head, shake hands, and eat her dinner. There is a corner of the vault dedicated to what I call the beautiful nightmares. These are the masterpieces that were rejected not for their lack of beauty, but because they waged war against the body of the wearer. Let us begin with a piece that survived the fall of an empire, only to be defeated by a bowl of consommé, the Vladimir Sotto. The history of this piece is written in blood and snow. These diamonds originally belonged to the Grand Duchess Vladimir of Russia. In 1917, as the world collapsed into revolution, they were left behind in a safe in St. Petersburg. They were rescued in a daring cinematic heist by a British agent disguised as a workman, smuggled out of the burning city in a pair of battered Gladstone bags. When they reached London, Queen Mary, never one for subtlety, had them set into a magnificent cascading river of diamonds. It was a piece designed to drip with imperial grandeur, but when Queen Elizabeth inherited it in 1953, she looked at this long swinging chain and saw only disaster. Palace insiders tell us that the Queen refused to wear it for a reason that is delightfully practical. She feared it would get in the soup. Imagine the scene: a state banquet, the eyes of the world upon you, and your priceless Romanov heirlooms clanking against the porcelain or dipping into the broth with every movement. It was a risk she simply would not take. And so, the diamonds that survived the Bolsheviks were defeated by the practicalities of a spoon. But if the Vladimir Sotto was too loose, our next treasure was a prison. This is the Love Trophy collar. Do not be deceived by the romantic name. Commissioned by Garrard in 1901, this is not a piece of jewelry. It is a piece of armor. It is a solid high wall of gold and diamonds, depicting Cupid's arrows and burning torches, designed to completely encase the neck. In the Edwardian era, this was the height of fashion. It forced the chin up and the spine straight, turning the queen consort into a living statue, an idol to be worshipped from afar. But Queen Elizabeth II was not a statue. She was a modern monarch of the television age. She needed to speak, to nod, to interact. To strap herself into the Love Trophy collar would have been to lock herself in a gilded cage of the past. It was a relic of a time when a queen was seen but not heard. Elizabeth, who needed to be both, left it in the dark. This theme of physical restriction continues with a marvel of engineering that attempted to turn diamonds into fabric. Queen Alexandra's collier résil. The word résil translates to fishnet, and that is exactly what this Cartier masterpiece from 1901 resembles. It is a wide, flexible lattice of diamonds that hugs the throat like a second skin. Originally, it was a riot of color, studded with Indian rubies and emeralds, but Queen Mary, in her quest for blinding brilliance, replaced them with large clear diamonds, turning the net into a wall of pure white ice. It is breathtaking. It is also nearly impossible to wear today. It covers so much skin, demanding such a specific, high-necked Victorian neckline, that on a modern woman it risks looking less like a royal heirloom and more like a costume. The Queen, with her keen eye for the appropriate, understood that some designs belonged to their century. She left the diamond net in its box, understanding that she was a monarch, not a mannequin. And finally, we must speak of the emerald choker. This was a piece born of the empire, a gift from the ladies of India, transformed by Queen Mary into an Art Deco masterpiece of 14 large emeralds set in platinum. It is geometric, bold, and undeniably stylish. Yet for Elizabeth, it remained unworn. The reason was a matter of sensory preference. The Queen famously disliked the sensation of anything tight around her throat. She preferred necklaces that sat lower, allowing her to breathe. The constriction of a choker was simply too uncomfortable for a woman who spent hours making conversation at diplomatic receptions. She respected the emeralds, but she respected her own comfort more. However, the Queen was a wise custodian. She knew that just because a jewel didn't suit her body, it didn't mean its life was over. She knew that one day, a woman with a longer neck and a more daring spirit would come along to unlock the fire in those green stones. But while physical discomfort is a valid reason to reject a jewel, it is the easiest hurdle to overcome. There is a much deeper, darker reason why some boxes in the royal vault remained sealed for 70 years. Sometimes you don't wear a jewel because it hurts your neck. You don't wear it because it hurts your heart. But physical pain is a fleeting thing. A pinch of a clasp or the weight of a stone is easily forgotten once the jewels are returned to their velvet beds. There is, however, a different kind of weight that does not lift so easily. It is the weight of memory. In 2002, Queen Elizabeth II suffered a double tragedy, losing both her sister and her mother in a matter of weeks. With their passing, she inherited a treasure trove of personal jewelry. Yet, for the next 20 years, the most iconic of these pieces remained locked away. This was not an accident. This was the shadow of the mother. Jewelry is not merely decorative, it is absorbent. When a woman wears a piece every day for half a century, the metal seems to take on her warmth, her scent, her very rhythm. For the Queen, opening these particular boxes must have felt less like accessorizing and more like an intrusion. Consider the sapphire corsage brooch. This was not just a pin, it was a part of the Queen Mother's anatomy. Given to her as a wedding gift in 1923 by Queen Mary, it was designed in the negligée style. This does not refer to the boudoir, but to the studied elegance of its construction. A diamond and sapphire floral scroll from which two unequal tassels hang, swaying gently with every movement. For 80 years the Queen Mother pinned this to her shoulder. It was there at christenings, at jubilees, and in the carriage rides of her widowhood. It was as essential to her silhouette as her brimmed hats. When Elizabeth inherited it, she placed it in the vault and stepped away. To wear it would perhaps have felt like identity theft, an attempt to mimic a woman who was inimitable. Then, there is the sheer overwhelming power of the Greville emerald necklace. These stones are the stuff of legend. Square-cut emeralds of a green so deep they resemble bottled forest shadow, framed in geometric diamonds. They came from the famous black tin trunk left by the society hostess Mrs. Greville, and whispers have always lingered that some of these stones may have once graced the neck of Marie Antoinette. The Queen Mother wore this necklace as a statement of dominance. It was her empress piece. Yet her daughter, the actual reigning queen, never wore it. Elizabeth's style was one of containment and discretion. This necklace screamed of opulence and power. It was too loud for Elizabeth's quiet authority, and perhaps too haunted by the formidable personality of the woman who wore it last. But the silence in the vault deepens when we look at the Greville festoon necklace. If the emeralds were a statement, this piece was a shout. It is a monumental construction by Cartier, 5 rows of diamonds that drape across the chest like a bib of fire. The Queen Mother famously wore all 5 rows at once, a wall of light that announced her arrival before she even entered the room. For Elizabeth to wear this would have required a fundamental change in her nature. She was a woman of pearls and single strands. The festoon necklace was a relic of a grander, more theatrical Edwardian age that died with her mother. To revive it would have been a costume, not a tribute. However, there is one piece where the silence tells a story, not of style, but of heartbreak. This is the silver anniversary flower brooch. It is a small thing compared to the festoon. A diamond and emerald tropical flower with a gold stem, but its value cannot be measured in carats. It was a gift from King George VI, to his wife in April 1948, marking 25 years of marriage. The Queen Mother cherished it. She wore it constantly during her long widowhood, a glittering, tangible connection to the husband she had lost too soon. When you look at a jewel like that, you do not see a brooch. You see a private conversation between two people who loved each other desperately. For the daughter to wear it? No, that would be a trespass. Some jewels are too intimate, too soaked in the specific love story of their original owners. Queen Elizabeth understood that the greatest respect she could pay to her parents' marriage was to let this symbol of it rest. There was, however, a single exception to this rule of silence, and it is poignant. The teak flower brooch is a chaotic, fussy Victorian piece. A large diamond flower with a detachable chain and dangling pendants. It is the antithesis of Elizabeth's clean, static style. She hated jewelry that moved or cluttered her outfit, yet in 2010 she wore it, just once. She pinned this beloved, dangling treasure of her mother's to her dress for a formal portrait by Lord Snowdon. She stared into the lens, the diamonds swaying on her shoulder, and then she put it back in the box, never to be seen again. It was a deliberate, quiet nod. A final, private goodbye captured on film before closing the lid forever. The Queen had made her peace with the mother she adored. But the vault held other ghosts. There were pieces that belonged to a different spirit entirely, jewels that sparkled with the dangerous, rebellious glamour of a sister who lived life in the headlines. If the Queen's refusal to wear her mother's jewels was an act of reverence, her rejection of the next collection was an act of definition. The royal family is built on a brutal hierarchy, the heir and the spare. One is born for duty, silence, and the crown. The other is left to navigate a life of privilege without purpose, often finding their voice in glamour, parties, and rebellion. Queen Elizabeth II was the heir. Her sister, Princess Margaret, was the ultimate spare. Margaret was the wild Windsor, chain-smoking, whiskey-drinking, and dazzlingly chic. She lived in Technicolor, while Elizabeth lived in grayscale. And the jewelry associated with Margaret reflected this spirit. Sharp, fashionable, and undeniably party-ready. For the Queen to wear these pieces would have been a contradiction. It would have been the monarch trying to play the socialite. The most glaring example of this is the lotus flower tiara. This jewel began its life as a necklace, a wedding gift to the Queen Mother in 1923, but it was quickly dismantled and reborn as a tiara of delicate papyrus leaf arches topped with pearls. It is light, it is low, and it sits on the head with a flapper-esque ease. Technically, this tiara belonged to the Queen, but spiritually, it was Margaret's. In the 1960s and 70s, this was Margaret's signature. She wore it low on her dark hair, often paired with a cigarette holder and a knowing smile. It became a symbol of her independence. When Margaret died, the tiara returned to the main vault. The Queen held it in her hands, this delicate circle of diamonds that had seen so many late nights and hushed conversations, and she put it away. To wear the lotus flower would be a strange kind of identity theft. It would be the responsible older sister trying on the leather jacket of the rebellious younger one. It simply didn't fit. The Queen, secure in her own identity, turned the vault into a lending library. She sent the tiara to the next generation, knowing that its energy required youth, not majesty. But the story of the halo tiara is even more telling. We know this piece now as the Kate Middleton tiara, the blindingly famous halo of light she wore to marry Prince William. But before that global moment, this tiara was a symbol of rejection. Commissioned by King George VI for his wife in 1936, this scrolling band of diamonds was gifted to a young Princess Elizabeth for her 18th birthday. It was meant to be her starter tiara. It was perfectly lovely, perfectly appropriate, and perfectly unworn. Elizabeth never put it on her head in public, not once. Why? Perhaps it was too small. Perhaps it was too modest. Or perhaps even at 18, she knew she was destined for heavier crowns. Instead, she loaned it out. It became the traveling crown for the women of the family who needed a bit of sparkle but held no constitutional power. Margaret wore it to coronations. Princess Anne wore it as a teenager. It became the tiara of the other women. The Queen seemed to say, "This is lovely, but it is not for the sovereign." She kept the heavy historic diadems for herself and let the halo drift to the sidelines, waiting for a future duchess to give it meaning. And then there is the meander tiara. This is a piece that carries the stark geometric lines of Greek antiquity. It is a diamond bandeau featuring the classic Greek key pattern, punctuated by laurel wreaths. It was a wedding gift to Elizabeth in 1947 from her mother-in-law, Princess Alice of Battenberg. It was a piece of Prince Philip's heritage, a nod to his Greek roots. It was personal, it was familial, and Elizabeth ignored it completely. She never wore it. One might suspect the design was too stark, too modern for her tastes, but there is a deeper resonance here. Princess Alice was a complex figure, a nun who smoked, a woman who had been institutionalized, a figure of intense, eccentric piety. She was, in her own way, as unconventional as Margaret. The Queen, the guardian of stability, passed this tiara directly to her daughter, Princess Anne. Anne, the hardest-working royal, the no-nonsense horsewoman, adopted the meander tiara as her own. It suited her. It was sharp, practical, and devoid of fuzziness. In doing so, the Queen once again curated the image of the monarchy. She understood that she was the canvas upon which the nation projected its stability. She could not wear the jewels of the wild sister, the eccentric mother-in-law, or the carefree debutante. She had to be the Queen. But if the spare's jewels were too light and frivolous, there was another category of rejected treasures that suffered from the opposite problem. These were the monsters of the collection. The pieces that were so heavy, so grand, and so dripping with imperial arrogance that to wear them in the modern age would be seen not as majestic, but as grotesque. There is a fine line between majesty and arrogance. A queen must sparkle, yes, but she must not blind her subjects. As the 20th century marched on, the British Empire dissolved into a commonwealth of nations. The world changed. Deference was replaced by scrutiny. And Queen Elizabeth II, a master of soft power, understood that her jewelry had to evolve with the times. She could not walk into a room looking like a conqueror. This brings us to the imperial burden, the masterpieces that were simply too loud, too expensive, or too historically heavy for a modern democratic monarch. The supreme casualty of this shift was the Delhi Durbar tiara. This is not a tiara, it is a cathedral of light. Created in 1911 for Queen Mary to wear at the Great Durbar in India, a ceremony marking the king and queen as emperor and empress, it is a towering circlet of diamond scrolls and lyres. It was designed to be seen from the back of an elephant, shimmering under the blazing Indian sun. It screams of empire. It whispers of dominion. Queen Mary wore it with gusto. The Queen Mother wore it to open Parliament in South Africa in 1947. But Elizabeth, she inherited this colossus in 2002 and immediately retired it. Can you imagine the Queen, in the age of austerity and political sensitivity, wearing a crown that was literally made to celebrate British rule over India? It would have been a diplomatic catastrophe. The tiara was stunning, yes, but it was politically radioactive. It was a relic of a world that no longer existed, and arguably one the monarchy wished to stop shouting about. So the Durbar tiara went dark. But sometimes the burden wasn't politics. It was redundancy. Consider Queen Adelaide's fringe. This is a piece of immense pedigree, commissioned in 1831 using diamonds from King George III. Queen Victoria adored it. It can be worn as a tiara or a necklace, a jagged halo of diamond spikes. It is a masterpiece. But Elizabeth ignored it for a heartbreakingly simple reason: she already had one. Her own wedding tiara, Queen Mary's fringe, was almost identical in style. But Mary's fringe was the one Elizabeth wore when she said "I do" to Prince Philip. It held the sentimental weight of her own life. Why wear Adelaide's historic fringe when she could wear her own emotional one? The same fate befell Queen Victoria's garter brooch. This 10-diamond bar brooch was a favourite of the Queen Mother, but Elizabeth had inherited a slightly larger 14-diamond version from Queen Mary. The Queen, a creature of habit, picked her favourite and stuck to it for 70 years. The historic 10-diamond brooch was simply the spare, doomed to the vault, not because it was flawed, but because it was second best. Then, we have the victims of fashion itself, the pearl sautoir. In the 1920s, the flapper look reigned supreme. Long fluid ropes of pearls that swung to the waist were the height of chic. The City of London gave the Queen Mother a magnificent pearl and diamond sautoir for her wedding. Her own mother, the Countess of Strathmore, gave her another. They were stunning, they were fun, and they were utterly useless to Queen Elizabeth II. As the Duchess of York became queen and the Jazz Age gave way to the solemnity of the post-war era, these flapper necklaces looked hopelessly dated. They were relics of a carefree youth that a monarch could not afford to project. They vanished into the dark, coiled in their boxes, like sleeping snakes, waiting for a fashion cycle that took a century to return. And finally, we must mention the strangest rejection of all, the Muscat tiara. This was a gift to Queen Victoria from the Sultan of Muscat and Oman. It is arguably the most beautiful object in the collection, a gold coronet adorned with paisley motifs, set with rubies and diamonds. But the real treasure is on the back, delicate hand-painted enamel miniatures. It is exquisite. It is also unwearable. The Sultan's own family hinted that this was never meant to be worn. It was an investment, a stash of wealth for a rainy day. It sits on the head awkwardly, more like a hat than a jewel. The Queen treated it as it was intended, as a museum piece. She displayed it in the grand vestibule at Windsor Castle, allowing the public to marvel at it, but she never insulted its artistry by trying to force it to be a working tiara. For 70 years these imperial burdens slept. The too big, the too old, and the too political were silenced by a queen who knew that her job was to serve, not to show off. But the Vault of Secrets is not a sealed tomb, it is a waiting room. And as the Queen's reign entered its twilight, and a new era dawned, the keys were quietly handed over. The new women of Windsor, Camilla, Kate, Meghan, stood before the steel doors. They didn't see burdens. They saw opportunities. The vault is patient. It knows that fashion is a circle and that history is a pendulum. What is too loud for one generation becomes vintage for the next. What is too heavy for a young mother becomes majestic for a mature queen consort. For 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II played the role of the curator. She protected these pieces by hiding them. But in the final years of her reign, and in the dawn of the new Carolean era, we have witnessed a miraculous thaw. The steel doors have creaked open. The dead are waking up. The first shock came on a sunny day in May 2018. When Meghan Markle stepped out of the car at St. George's Chapel, the world gasped. On her head was not a familiar floral piece, but a stark geometric band of platinum and diamonds that hadn't been seen for 65 years. This was Queen Mary's diamond bandeau. It had been locked away since 1953. To an entire generation of royal watchers, it was a ghost. A piece so forgotten that many didn't even know it existed. Its clean Art Deco lines were perfect for Meghan's modern minimalist gown. In that moment, the Queen showed her genius. She had saved this specific, forgotten jewel for exactly the right woman, proving that even the deepest sleepers in the vault are just waiting for their cue. Then, there is the quiet triumph of the halo tiara. The starter tiara that Elizabeth rejected in 1944 finally found its destiny in 2011. When Catherine Middleton wore it, she didn't just wear alone, she wore a symbol of continuity. The tiara that was too small for a sovereign became the perfect crown for a future queen. It was a circle closing, a gift from a father to a daughter, finally finding a home on the brow of a mother. But the true renaissance, the boldest unlocking of the vault, belongs to Queen Camilla. Camilla has done what Elizabeth could not. She has walked into the shadow of the mother and turned on the lights. Remember the Greville inheritance? The heavy, loud honeycomb tiara and the massive festoon necklace that Elizabeth found too theatrical. Camilla has made them her signature. She wears the Greville tiara with a confidence that rivals the Queen Mother herself. She drapes the Greville festoon necklace, all 5 rows of it, across her neck for state banquets. Where Elizabeth saw too much, Camilla sees just enough. She has the age, the stature, and the presence to carry these Edwardian monsters. She has liberated them from the ghost of the Queen Mother, proving that these jewels don't belong to the dead. They belong to the woman who has the courage to wear them. And the revival continues. We have seen the Alexandra necklace, the Queen Mother's favorite wedding necklace, unseen since 1993, suddenly reappear on the Princess of Wales in 2018. The silence of 25 years was broken in an instant. We have seen Diana's emerald choker, the Art Deco masterpiece that sat in the dark after the tragedy of Paris, reborn on Catherine in Boston. She didn't wear it as a headband, she honored the past without mimicking it. This is the ultimate secret of the royal vault. It is not a graveyard, it is a theater. The actors change, the costumes are restyled, but the show goes on. Queen Elizabeth II understood this better than anyone. She left these treasures in the dark not to bury them, but to save them. She knew that by not wearing them, she was preserving their power for the future. She was leaving a legacy of discovery for the women who would come after her. So, the next time you see a flash of diamonds on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, look closely. It might be a new acquisition, or it might be a sleeping beauty, waking up after a 100-year nap, blinking in the sunlight, ready to tell a new story. The vault is open, and the best secrets are yet to be revealed.